Welcome back. All right, so today we are going to continue on with Unit 1. So this is Unit 1, Lesson 2, and this is Introduction to Personal Health. So before we get started and before we jump into the Google Slides, I want to make sure that you are filling out the notes sheet for Unit 1. You can find this under classwork on Google Classroom. Scroll down to Unit 1, Introduction to Personal Health, and then you'll see the material right there. Go ahead and click on that, and then it will bring up the note sheet for you. Once it's loaded, go over to File, and then go down to Make a Copy and click Make a Copy. By doing this, it will make a copy and save it to your Google Drive, so then you will be able to make edits in the notes while we go along. So please make sure that you are filling out the blank spaces as we go along. This is going to be due at the end of the unit, and it will be helpful for you on exams and assessments to have these notes. So please make sure that you are doing that. All right, we are going to jump in today by talking about the 11 components of physical fitness. So there are 11 components of physical fitness. Sorry about that. They are broken down into two categories: health-related components of fitness and skill-related fitness components. So in the health-related components of fitness, we have cardiovascular endurance, muscular endurance, strength, flexibility, and body composition. And then in the skill-related fitness components, we have power, speed, agility, coordination, balance, and reaction time. So we're going to talk about agility first. And if you are watching this at home, when we practice these exercises later, if you click on any of these photos, it will take you to different exercises that you can do at home to help strengthen your agility or to work the component of agility. So agility is basically minimizing transition time from one movement pattern to another. It's required to perform a lot of fitness movements and exercises correctly. And good agility also requires you to be good at other components of fitness as well, such as flexibility, balance, coordination, and speed. It can be improved through training drills that specifically address agility, but it can also be trained through the other health-related components that I mentioned above, like flexibility and coordination. We are going to measure agility through the Illinois Agility Run, and I will tell you a little bit more about that in a future slide. But to train it, you could incorporate ladder drills into your physical activity. Here's a picture of that over here, and I believe I connected a ladder drill activity to this photo if you wanted to do that. You could incorporate lateral running drills, L drills, and shuttle runs into your workouts. Those would all help work your agility component. And the main thing that you have to think about when you're doing agility is that you are training in all three planes of motion. You should do this in drills that work them individually as well as drills that incorporate all three. So I'm going to show you a brief video on the three planes of motion now.
We want to describe motion of the human body. We need to identify the space on which that motion occurs. To do this, we divide the body into three different sections or planes: sagittal, transverse, and frontal. Today, Molly is going to be demonstrating these motions and how they occur on each one of these planes. The sagittal plane is a vertical plane cutting the body into left and right halves. So any forward and backward movement parallel to this plane occurs in the sagittal plane. Movements such as flexion and extension will occur in the sagittal plane. As you can see with this lunge movement that Molly is demonstrating, her body is moving front to back, flexing and extending at the hip and knee joint, therefore occurring in the sagittal plane. Also, an exercise such as a bicep curl would occur in the sagittal plane. The flexion movement at the elbow joint is running parallel to that invisible plane, again dividing the body into left and right halves. The frontal plane is a vertical plane that passes through the body, dividing it into anterior and posterior halves. Any lateral or side movement, moving towards or away from the midline, will be on the frontal plane. So movements such as adduction and abduction, or elevation and depression of the scapula, will occur on the frontal plane. For example, Molly is performing a jumping jack, which occurs on the frontal plane, since the movement of ab and adduction of the arms and legs is occurring parallel to that plane, moving towards and away from the midline. Additionally, Molly is also performing a lateral torso flexion. That would occur on the frontal plane, since the movement of her torso is occurring parallel to that plane, again, which is dividing the body into anterior and posterior halves. Lastly is the transverse plane. This is a horizontal plane that divides the body, or parts of the body, into top and bottom halves. Anytime we rotate a joint, it occurs in the transverse plane. So movements such as rotation, pronation, and supination all occur in the transverse plane. For example, you can see that Molly is demonstrating an external and internal rotation of the humerus. Since this rotation of the shoulder joint is pivoting, it indicates it's on the transverse plane. A movement also like this torso rotation that Molly is demonstrating, the movement is running parallel to that invisible plane, which is cutting the body in half. Keep in mind that while it's helpful to define the three principal planes, many human movements do not occur in a single plane and usually cross two or more. As Molly is demonstrating a lunge with an upper body rotation, you can see it occurs in both the sagittal and transverse plane. To get a better idea of how the planes of motion work, try applying it to your everyday life. As you make movements in your daily life, try and think about what plane of motion that occurs in.
All right. So hopefully that was helpful in explaining to you the differences between the three different planes of motion. Oopsies. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is balance. So the next component we're talking about is balance. So balance is the ability to control the placement of your body's center of gravity in relation to its support base. It can be static or dynamic, and it's basically maintaining equilibrium whilst being stationary or while moving. It is a complex skill that we develop using many senses, including vision, audio, and touch. And as we grow older, our balance actually weakens, much like our senses do. Core strength is an essential part of balance, and good balance is key to not just excelling in sports and activities, but also to practicing various exercise movements correctly and your overall well-being. Since it is required, it requires that you have precise control over the body's position and movement, and good balance requires good core strength. How we're going to measure it is the standing balance test and the balance board test. And how you can train for it or how you can practice it to improve balance. You could practice yoga or martial arts. You could do stand on a balance board while working on homework. You could stand on a wobble balance board for at least 30 seconds on each leg. And some exercises or sports that incorporate balance are walking, running, climbing the stairs, yoga, and martial arts. So again, if you are at home and you are looking for activities to help strengthen balance, you can click on both of these photos and it will take you to an activity there. You could also check out Netflix under the class materials in Google Classroom, and there's quite a few different yoga, flexibility, and balance activities on there as well. The third component of fitness is cardiovascular endurance. This is the ability of the heart and lungs to work together to provide needed oxygen and fuel to the body. It determines the efficiency with which your body delivers oxygen to different parts. So especially the muscles that are being used. So how efficient is your heart in delivering blood to the different organs and delivering oxygen to the different organs in the body? Oxygen is required for the heart, lungs, and muscles to work continuously over a long period of time. And physical activity that trains cardiorespiratory endurance focuses on the repetitive, dynamic, and prolonged movements using major muscle groups. How we measure it doing the copper run. That's how we will measure it. And then how you can train for how you can improve it. To exercise your heart, you need to elevate your heart rate. So you need to elevate it within a safe level and maintain that heart rate for an extended period of time. This can cause the heart to pump more blood, which will deliver fresh oxygen throughout the body. And some sports or examples where you use a lot of cardiovascular endurance include walking, running, hiking, cycling, swimming, cross-country skiing or running, soccer, football, basketball, kayaking, and more. All right, and the last component that we're going to talk about today is coordination. This is the ability to minimize transition time from one movement pattern to another. Good coordination is about being able to smoothly execute skills by combining multiple movement patterns into one single fluid movement. It's classified as both a fine and gross motor skill. So a fine motor skill is a skill that requires a high degree of control and precision in the small muscles of the hand, such as using a fork or writing. And then gross motor skills are the opposite of that. So there's skills that use large muscles in the body. They include broader movements such as walking, jumping, skipping, walking backwards, those types of things. How we're going to measure it, we're going to measure it through throwing, catching, and bouncing tests, as well as alternate hand wall toss tests. And then you can train it by participating in activities that enhance your hand-eye coordination. Most of the time, these are sport or exercise specific. If you are wanting to train for tennis, then you would train for tennis specifically and work on coordination in that sport. Or if it's ping pong and you want to get better at ping pong or soccer, or maybe you want to get better at catching the ball in football. So you would actually train specifically for the sport, that you want to improve. And then some exercises for examples of coordination are yoga, martial arts, throwing, catching, and dribbling. All right, so the next thing we are going to do is we are actually going to test those 4 components of physical fitness. So please move on to the next link on your HyperDot.